YTV, VTR 1737, Justice, Part 1, Take 1.
It's always a gamble.
Well, that's that.
I'm afraid I've got a favour to ask, Harriet.
Will I take stamps instead of money?
No, it's nothing to do with this case. It's another one. They're holding a girl on a baby snatch charge. Her name's June Robertson. Well, I can't tell you much at present, except that she abandoned the baby in Borough Park, and they picked her up later trying to hitch a lift north on the Darrow Road. She's coming before the magistrates tomorrow.
Psychiatric case?
Likely, but I can't say for sure.
And you want me to look after things?
If you wouldn't mind, I'll have the paper sent over. I mean, you'll be down there anyway. See what you can do about bail.
What about sureties? Can you get them organized in time?
Well, I'll do my best.
I gather you won't be there yourself, Philip.
Well, I can't, I'm afraid. I have to be on the 8:10 for Lincoln.
Well, I'll do what I can, which may not be much.
Oh, there is one other thing.
I thought there might be.
She's already on probation. It's a shoplifting offence 6 months ago.
How much are you going to get me for this lot, then?
Far too soon to say yet, Mr. Graham.
You'll let me know, won't you, what the going rate is for a cripple these days? I've been here 3 months already.
Everything possible will be done by way of compensation.
Look, I've got 3 kids to bring up.
Mr. Graham, your job is just to get well for the moment.
Get well. I mean to take those bastards for every penny I can.
Fact is, you were technically in the wrong operating that lathe without the guard.
Whose solicitor are you?
Well, I'm simply pointing out that there may be difficulties.
Look, everybody leaves the guard off. The company have turned a blind eye for years. Well, it cuts your output in half otherwise, so it's in their interests.
If we can establish that fact, it'll be of considerable help.
Listen, those guards aren't worth a whistle anyway. Well, that flying drill, it would...
Are you all right?
Oh, Christ, what a bloody daft question.
Can I do anything? Call a nurse?
Well, just do your job. I've done mine, now do yours.
Is anyone here connected with June Robertson?
Yes, I am, in a way.
Surety?
I beg your pardon?
Have you come down to stand surety for her? Bail?
Good Lord, no. I'm Squires, Michael Squires. It was our child that was abandoned yesterday.
Oh, I see.
Police thought I might be able to answer a few more questions.
She worked for you, I gather.
Yes.
As the baby's nanny?
A temporary home help. We have a qualified nanny.
Did she live in the house with you?
For the last 2 months or so.
Did you know she was on probation?
Yes, the probation officer asked us to consider her for the job. She'd been broke, stole a bottle of milk and some biscuits. Hardly put her in the criminal league.
Mr. Squires, if there's any question of bail, would you be
Now,
prepared?
if you're going to ask us whether we'll have her back, I'd like to help, but no.
I understand. The fact is I know very little about the case as yet, except that your child was unharmed.
It's a risk I can't take.
Yes, of course.
Excuse me.
Yes?
You were asking June Robertson. Could I speak to you privately?
Thank you, Mr. Squires. I'm sorry to have troubled you.
That's all right.
What can I do for you?
I'm June's mother. They phoned me last night, the solicitors. I came down first thing.
I'm glad you're here, Mrs. Robertson. I'm Harriet Peterson. I'm afraid I can't tell you very much of what's going on. I haven't spoken to your daughter yet, but I'm exploring the possibility of bail.
Well, that's what the solicitor said. I've got some money put by, Miss Peterson.
What about accommodation? Can I tell the court you're prepared to have your daughter live with you at home?
She can't live at home, Miss Peterson. The trouble is her father. He won't have her in the house.
Hello, Miss Robertson. Please don't get up. I only want a moment. My name is Harriet Peterson.
You're the lawyer.
Yes.
They said you'd be coming.
Did they explain why? It's about bail. Do you understand what that means?
Whether I stay in prison or not till the trial.
That's right. Do you want me to make an application?
Well, yes. I mean, rather than stay here.
Well, that depends on a number of things. For instance, are you intending to plead guilty or not guilty? You don't have to make up your mind finally yet.
Well, not guilty, of course. I've done nothing wrong. It's ridiculous. I shouldn't be here at all. It's all wrong.
Philip, there was no point even applying for bail. She has to have somewhere to live acceptable to the court. No, her father won't have her in the house. Well, the police objected strongly. After all, she is on probation. Well, it's a simple case. They should be ready for committal in a fortnight. The most important thing is to have her seen by a psychiatrist as soon as possible. She seems to think that because she didn't harm the child, she's done nothing wrong.
Dykes and Rothwell. I was led in that by Sir Neil Fraser.
I remember well.
I suppose if any case attempts a definition of contributory negligence in respect of a machine operator, that's it.
I agree.
Yes, but you see, what does it mean, contributory negligence? Who was mostly to blame? The man who supplied the machine, the man who owns the machine, or the man who operates the machine?
Well, I suppose...
Yes, indeed, suppose. It's a minefield of imponderables. One begins to wonder whether case law can be any guide at all on the subject.
Which is why we felt that if anyone could guide us through it...
Flattery, Mr. Butler, will go a long way with me, but I doubt whether it will cut much ice with the judge, particularly if we get one who believes that only a bad workman blames his tools. At least in this instance, we were in front of Richards, who has some regard for honest as opposed to merely hard labour.
Well, we're in your hands, Mr. Elliot.
How much has been paid into court?
25,000.
So that's what Grantley Brothers thinks is fair compensation for a crippled man.
According to them, of course, anyone who leaves the guard off only has himself to blame.
But if, as you say, it was common practice to operate these machines without the guard?
Since the accident to my client, the company's been very strict, understandably. Before that, well, we do have a number of witnesses.
In that case, Mr. Butler, you can tell your client that we shall be thinking in terms much closer to 50,000 than 25.
I'll do that, Mr. Elliot. Believe me, it'll be a tonic to him.
You think I'm a nutter or something?
June, please understand that Dr. Gilpin is here to help you.
But I'm not an edge case. I'm as sane as you are.
I'm sure you are, June. Psychiatrists don't divide the world into sane and insane. We're all of us different shades of grey.
June, please, it's for your own good to cooperate.
All I want to do is talk to you for a while. You see, I've been asked to make a report. Not to the police, but to your own lawyers. They may use parts of it later to help your defense.
You've everything to gain, June, and nothing to lose.
Okay.
That's better. Much more sensible. All right, then. I'll leave you two together. I'll be in touch before long, June. I expect I'll hear from you.
Yes, of course. Do you smoke?
No.
No, me. I gave up 2 years ago, but I still carry a pack to see if I weaken. Luckily, I haven't yet. You know, June, the law, to its credit, is at last becoming as interested in why people do things as what they do. And that's why they bring in people like me, not to label you a head case or anything else, just to get at the truth, see how things felt from your side.
I had a baby nearly a year ago. We're adopted.
Yes, I know that from your papers.
Well, where I come from, it's about the worst thing you can do. It's worse than murder. You should have heard me, Dad.
Was there no question of marrying your boyfriend?
He disappeared as soon as I told him I was pregnant.
Did you think about having an abortion?
Not with my dad. He's religious.
So you had no choice but to have the baby and then offer it for adoption?
Not unless I left home.
Did you think of leaving?
Nowhere to go. Not without money. My mum was all right in the end. She'd have let me keep him.
At home?
Yeah.
Did you want to keep the baby?
I don't know.
Do you think about him now?
Sometimes.
Wish you kept him or not?
I don't know.
But you did leave home immediately after the adoption. Why?
Nothing to stay for anymore.
Your parents?
I just felt I had to get away.
Why?
I was depressed, I suppose. There were arguments. I couldn't stand it, so I left.
With nowhere to go and without any money?
I didn't think about anything. I just went. I didn't care what happened so long as I got away.
Do you think there's any connection between what happened the other day and your own baby? What went through your mind when you took that child out the other day?
I just took him out for a walk.
As you've done before?
Yes.
How often?
4 or 5 times, 6 maybe.
But in the past, you'd only taken him out when asked to by his mother or his nanny, isn't that so?
I thought it would be all right.
So you didn't intend leaving him in the park?
No, of course not.
Do you want to try and tell me what happened?
Well, everything was just usual. People out, children, women with their kids. Like me. I remember thinking, I bet they take me for his mother. I bet they think it's my baby in that pram. And then I thought, well, it could be, couldn't it? If I hadn't let them take mine, it could have been mine. But this one's not mine. It's somebody else's. Like mine. Mine's somebody else's now, and this one's somebody else's, and I don't want it, and I pushed the pram at the water. I just caught it in time. I thought, Christ almighty, what am I doing? What am I doing here?
At the time of the incident, Miss Robertson was, in my opinion, suffering from a reactive depression arising from the adoption of her own illegitimate child, the impulsive desertion in Borough Park of the second child, and so forth and so forth and so on. I think he means she wasn't herself.
It's a gift. Somebody up there loves you.
Well, it should help in mitigation.
You're not still going to plead guilty, are you?
What else? Facts aren't disputed. She took the child without permission, dumped it in the park, and bolted.
But you can't plead on that, not with this psychiatrist's report. You've got to run on it.
You think so?
No question. Not guilty.
What defense would you suggest?
Automatism.
Automatism.
Automatism. Spontaneous pressure on the brain. Or, if that's too complicated, no intention. The girl was not responsible for her actions. You'll make the law reports. The Lord's too, most likely.
Carving myself a niche in legal history is not my first priority.
Harriet, the field is wide open. There's virtually no case law. And what there is can mean damn nearly anything you choose to make of it.
And damn nearly anything the prosecution choose to make of it, too. No, thank you, James. I am a lawyer, not a gambler.
Are you sure?
What do you mean by that?
Well, the best you can hope for is that you'll get her off with what? 6 months? My way, at least, there's the chance of an acquittal.
If I put up some cockeyed defense like automatism and fail to make it stick...
The same judge that would have given her 6 months on a plea of guilty will give her 2 years for wasting his time.
We are talking about an emotionally disturbed girl in prison, not legal nicety.
The more reason to go all out for an acquittal.
The trouble with you, James, is you never know when to settle.
Winning is what I'm paid for.
And judgment is what I'm paid for. That means not sticking my neck out and getting my client's head chopped off.
Harriet, whatever your plea in mitigation, your client will go to prison. She has a previous conviction for which she's still on probation.
If I keep the judge's sympathy by pleading guilty, I've a good chance of getting a suspended sentence.
Not a hope.
You think not? Well, we just have to wait and see, won't we?
Back to what I said before. It's a gamble. It's always a gamble.
Next event of 300 yards.
You're doing fine, Mr. Graham.
Oh, sure. Might even be able to get to the toilet inside 6 months.
You're making progress. That's what counts.
As long as they don't take it off me money. Quid less for every step, eh?
You leave that to me and Mr. Elliot.
I hope this bloke's as good as you say.
He's a fighter. We're lucky to have him.
Not the only fighter, I hope. Come on, Mr. Graham, a few more steps. You've rested long enough. Forward, lean, and forward. Good.
Yes? Mr. Elliot. No, I'm afraid he's out just now. Oh, quite soon, I should think. Yeah, I see. Well, can I get him to call you back when he... Oh, just a minute. I think that's him coming in now. Mr. Elliot, it's for you, sir. Well, a Scottish name, didn't quite catch it. Says he's returning your call.
Can I take it in here, but I won't be a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Robert. Yes. Yes, hello, how are you? Good. No, I'm fine, yes. And how's Pamela? Good. Yes, well, it is. It's a long time no whatnot. I thought we might do something about it. What? Yes, of course, strictly ulterior. Well, what about the vine? Yes, about 6-ish? Fine. Yes, all right. What? Yes, all right. Yes, see you later then. Yes, bye. Well, Robert the McGregor.
Oh.
My esteemed opponent in this industrial injuries case. And the man who set out to be the youngest QC since Maxwell Fyfe and failed.
Well, only by 18 months.
He didn't like it.
He's a friend of yours, then?
Of sorts. Once did me the most enormous favour.
Oh.
Married a girlfriend of mine.
According to the probation report, she left home immediately after the baby's adoption. She came down to London hoping to scrape a bit of gold from the pavements and landed up with a bunch of squatters in Camden Town.
That was when she stole the milk and biscuits.
Asked in court if she had anything to say, she replied, "I was hungry." It was because of that her father finally turned her picture to the wall, I think is a phrase they have up there.
That sort of man, is he?
Fairly ordinary sort of domestic tyrant. Lower middle class, middle brow, Midlands warehouse manager. A staunch defender of the faith and flag, especially against his own children.
Her mother seemed a decent enough little woman.
Oh, I think she is. But the father rules, and he has very clear ideas about right and wrong.
There's one idea I've been toying with. Well, that man I met the first morning, the baby's father.
What about him?
Seemed a reasonable sort of man. A bit shaken, of course, by what had happened. I think it's possible he'd speak up for the girl even now.
Yes, he probably would if he was approached the right way. He's your archetypal armchair radical, isn't he? 10,000 a year unearned income, plus another 10 earned by the sweat of his brow.
As what?
Art editor of Homes and Beauty.
Bully for him.
But, as I say, good radical conscience, in need of being used. Yes, I'll have a word with him if you like.
Do that, Philip. If he'd agree to appear, his wife even, for that...
Oh, that's less likely.
Do what you can. Talk to him. Any judge willing to fly in the face of that kind of
Would
evidence.
have to be a hard-bitten, peevish, misanthropic sadist.
Then we'll just have to hope we're in luck, won't we?
Said an ice cream?
Figure 8 My God, how tiny. No, Robert, this one's on me. Thank you very much.
Pamela sends her love, by the way.
Ah, and how is she enjoying the squalling brat?
Well, the squalling brat has a sister now, also squalling.
My word. Congratulations. It's a veritable production line.
Well, I think we'll have to go slow for the time being. Pamela still refuses to have a nanny, says it disrupts the natural relationship of mother and child.
Well, she always was a romantic.
Yes.
She missed the agency?
Who could possibly miss the agency? Now, given half a chance, she stayed out in the country all the week. Well, so would I, for that matter, but well, commuting's impossible.
I bought myself a little cottage. It's pretty ramshackle. I've had the builders in for 3 months. However, the address will remain a secret, and I shall not have a telephone.
Yeah, the ultimate status symbol, James. A refuge from success. Now, pursue it for all you're worth, and then play hard to get.
Robert, talking shop for a moment, if I may.
You want to discuss money, I dare say.
Yes.
I'm afraid there's no chance we could see our way to upping that offer. 25,000, I'd have thought, was about the ceiling in the circumstances.
Setting aside all the obvious jokes about Scottish thrift, I'm sure even you would hardly call that generous.
Now, wait a minute. Your client knew the risk he was running.
So did the company and turned a blind eye.
Well, I've a notion you won't find that so easy to prove.
Have a damn good try.
I'm sure you will. And good luck to you.
Robert, the assessment of contributory negligence, as you well know,
is anybody's guess.
That man had a potential working life of 30 years. Well, now he'll never walk more than a few steps without crutches. How is he supposed to bring up a family of 3, cope with a mortgage, constant medical attention?
Well, the fact remains he took the guard off that machine. Now, within the obvious limitations, you can stick a pin in a figure, and he'll as likely be right about his compensation as the next man.
And your pin's in at 25?
That's right. You've seen we're listed to appear in front of Briggs.
Yes. It's my first time.
I've had the experience twice. He's variable. Can be a cantankerous old devil.
So I've heard.
He's a bachelor, lives with his sister in Wimbledon. If she's playing him up, that'll not help your chances of a generous award one bit.
It's marvellous, isn't it? Whatever happened to justice?
Well, at least you still can't buy it.
That's some consolation, I suppose.
Well, of course. But don't let the idea get around. It could cost people like us a lot of money.
Well done, Philip. That could just do it. Well, we can only hope. Yes. Fine. See you then. Bye.
Good news, Miss Peterson?
As you say, Bill, good news. The baby's father has agreed to appear and say that June Robertson's behaviour before the incident was impeccable. Hard-working, honest, and devoted to the baby.
Well, quite a trump card. If anything can get your girl that suspended sentence.
If anything can. I only wish we could get the same kind of cooperation from her father.
Thank you. Ah, Robert. Well, you ready to make me an offer yet?
Not on your life, my boy.
You disappoint me.
That's what I'm here for.
Now, Mr. Butler. How are you, Mr. Graham?
How do?
Tell me, Mr. Graham, I recognise some of those faces over there. That's your managing director, I think.
That's right, Kirby.
Yeah.
And the fella sitting next to him with the glasses on, that's our foreman.
Yeah. And the chap with the beard is Bill Stallard.
Don't know him.
Well, he's an engineer. Probably their specialist witness. I've used him myself in the past. But who's the shifty-looking type with his back to us? The one who's talking to the foreman now?
Don't know what the hell he's doing here.
Oh, is he?
The name's Gibbon.
What, is he from the factory?
No, he's a machinist. Leastways he was. I heard he was made up to supervisor a few weeks back.
Well, have you no idea where he's here?
Oh, not a clue. I hardly know him.
Does he have any connection with your accident?
No, nothing. In fact, he wasn't even there at the time. He was off sick.
See.
Court will be upstanding.
Peculiar atmosphere in this courtroom, Usher. What's this extraordinary smell?
Smell, my lord?
Yes, stuffiness. Are there no windows in the place?
There are 2 fanlights, my lord, above the well of the court.
Well, see they're open, will you? I will not conduct the court's business in an atmosphere reminiscent of stale cabbage and mothballs. Little fresh air will do nobody any harm. Now then.
I'm afraid, my lord. I'm afraid the fanlights don't open.
What do you mean they don't open? Why don't they open?
They've been sealed, my lord, against the weather.
Sealed?
There is an air conditioner in operation, my lord.
What did you say?
Air conditioner, my lord.
Dreadful transatlantic contraption. No wonder the place stinks like an alehouse. Get the wretched thing turned off at once. Now, Mr. Associate, will you call the case?
Graham against Grantley Brothers Engineering.
Mr. Graham, why had you left the guard off your machine on the day of the accident?
It was the usual thing. I always left it off.
Why did you?
Same as everyone else. None of us used them.
Are you quite sure of that?
Well, there may have been one or two did now and then. But by and large, especially the more experienced men, we just didn't bother.
Why not?
It made the job a lot slower. Wouldn't have been much use anyway.
Did you ever
Just a moment, Mr. Elliot. I'm making a note.
Did you ever discuss the matter with management or with any of their representatives?
With the foreman one time, yes.
And what did he say?
Well, he just said, by rights, we should have 'em on like, but he could see the problem.
Problem?
Aye, slowing you down. What with, well, export orders and so on.
Did any other member of the management know this practice?
All of them, I'd say. I mean, you only had to walk through the shop and you'd see, and there was always somebody about.
Did anyone at any time ever insist that you should obey the strict rules and use the guard?
Never.
Thank you, Mr. Graham.
Mr. Graham, I believe the company operates what is called a productivity bonus scheme. Am I right?
Yes, it does.
Meaning that the more work you get through, the more money you can expect to earn.
Yeah, that's right.
So that by keeping up a high output, you could expect to earn a very reasonable wage.
A fair wage, yes.
Mr. McGregor, this is most interesting, but is it relevant to the case before the court?
My lord, I'm merely seeking to underline that the benefits, if any there were, of working with an unguarded machine accrued in a large part to the plaintiff himself. In other words, that he had motive enough of his own for running this risk and wasn't merely anxious to fulfill the company's export scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Graham, you said just now that the guard wouldn't have been much use anyway in the event of an accident such as yours.
Yes.
How did you know that?
Well,
Had you ever witnessed a similar accident when the guard was in use?
Well, no, but...
But what, Mr. Graham?
Well, it was obvious.
Obvious. I see. Well, Lord, I shall be calling an expert witness who will give evidence that the guards on these particular machines are wholly adequate and have in fact been proved so on a number of occasions.
And I have no doubt that counsel for the plaintiff will also be producing another expert witness to demonstrate precisely the opposite. I suppose we have to go through with it. Only hope they don't take too long over it.
Lord. Mr. Graham, you say you have never witnessed a similar accident, at least not when the guard was in use. Have you witnessed one when the guard was not in use?
No.
A narrow escape, perhaps?
No.
You hadn't yourself, prior to your accident, ever narrowly escaped injury while using the machine without a guard?
No, never.
Not even 6 weeks before the accident itself occurred?
I don't know what you're getting at.
I must confess, Mr. McGregor, neither do I.
Well, perhaps I should explain, my lord,
Yes, a good idea.
That I, too, as well as counsel for the plaintiff, shall be calling one of Mr. Graham's workmates. My witness, however, will testify that some 6 weeks before his accident, Mr. Graham admitted to the witness that he had already narrowly escaped injury in identical circumstances.
That's a bloody lie.
Mr. Graham, you will not bring the language of the shop floor into my court. Is that understood?
Yes, sir.
Continue, Mr. McGregor.
Now, Mr. Graham, to repeat my question, had you, or had you not, some 6 weeks before the accident, had a lucky escape which left you fully aware of the risk you were running and which you chose to go on running?
I had not.
Good morning, Mr. Robertson.
Morning.
It's good of you to come. Do sit down.
Thank you, Miss Peterson.
And let us hope your journey won't have been wasted.
I am not concerned by a little personal inconvenience, Miss Peterson. I have nothing to say that I haven't said to Mr. Cook, but of telling you face to face will convince you.
I was rather hoping I might convince you to change your mind.
I am aware of that, Miss Peterson. I am also aware that you are a distinguished member of your profession. I want to make it quite clear I am prepared to meet any expenses
Your
which
daughter has been granted legal aid. There'll be no expense either to her or to yourself.
I'd prefer to pay. I'm not accustomed to passing my responsibilities on to the state.
In that case, I would have thought that offering your daughter a roof over her head would have been the least you could do. The main reason she's in prison and not released on bail is because of your refusal to have her in the house. Other considerations apart, have you any idea what that's costing the state?
I've already acknowledged you're a clever lawyer, Miss Peterson. I can't swap debating points with you.
Then let us look at the facts. Your daughter is sick, Mr. Robertson. If you won't take my word for it, read this psychiatrist's report.
The law must take its course. What do these psychiatrists know of human nature? Except for making excuses where an honest man would have the courage to admit the difference between right and wrong. I have more faith in British justice than in the words of those who speak for whoever buys their services.
I'm touched by your respect for the law, Mr. Robertson. But the law's concern goes far beyond a simple definition of right and wrong, or guilt and innocence.
I was not aware I spoke of any simple definition, Miss Peterson. Blessed is the man whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law will he exercise himself day and night. The law of the Lord is no simple thing, Miss Peterson. I hope you are not now going to tell me that the law of the Lord has no place in your law of the land.
On the contrary, the law of the land is not without compassion. As a practicing Christian, I believe you know the meaning of that word.
My daughter brought disgrace upon herself and her family. A child conceived outside marriage, and she herself barely more than a child. But I forgave her, Miss Peterson. I provided a home where the burden was shared, and I made the proper arrangements thereafter. I believe I did my duty. My thanks was to see my daughter leave my house with not a word until the police brought notice of a charge of theft. Now this. Sin no more, said Christ to the harlot. Forgiveness, yes, but sin no more. I have other children, Miss Peterson, younger children. I must consider the example to them.
It is by no means certain you'll be put under any obligation to have your daughter live with you again. But the law, of which you have so high an opinion, will look more kindly on an offender whose father is at the very least prepared to make an appearance and show some personal interest.
I'm sorry, Miss Peterson. The matter is not open to discussion. My mind is made up.
Yes, Mr. Robertson, I can see that.
If I may, I'd like to say one more thing. Please don't imagine that my decision was taken lightly. I realize it may seem hard...
You don't have to explain, Mr. Robertson, at least not to me. And you have the satisfaction of having done your duty, haven't you?
Yes, Miss Peterson, I have.
Mr. Morris, is it not a fact that since these machines were installed 10 years ago, there has been a notice on the wall of the locker room, which is used daily by you and the other employees, saying that guards must be used at all times?
Well, yes, but nobody took that seriously. I mean, nobody was expected to.
Really? And why not?
Well, it was just a sort of a legal thing, that's all.
I see. A sort of a legal thing. But you were aware of its existence?
We were aware of it, yes, but, well, I mean, if we bothered about every notice that was ever pinned to a wall, we'd never get anything done, would we? I mean, we've got to get on with the job best way we can. Never minding about what's been stuck on a wall just because of some local bylaw or something.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Morris.
Mr. Elliot, do you wish to... Yes, I see you do.
Mr. Morris, since Mr. Graham's accident, what specific instructions have been issued by management about the use of these guards?
Well, they come round every day now and check to see we're using them.
And what specific instructions were issued by management before Mr. Graham's accident?
None whatever. They didn't bother.
Hey, James, how's it going?
Hey, Hart. That's hard to say. We should be finished by tomorrow. My God, though, that Briggs.
Don't have to tell me.
Yes, I know. You've had the experience.
He varies.
So I've heard.
Between bad and much worse.
Oh, thanks a lot. You on with the Robertson girl?
Tomorrow in front of Dunbar.
Well, he's not the easiest of men either.
Well, at least he's more reliable than Briggs.
Lucky for you.
And for my client, I hope.
Harriet, are you going back to Chambers?
Why?
Well, I was wondering if we could have a drink later.
Oh, of course. The vine?
Yes, about 7-ish.
Right.
Ah, Robert.
James,
Oh, sorry, do you know Harriet Peterson, Robert McGregor?
Yes, we have met. Hello.
nice to see you.
Well, I assume you two want to talk, so I'll leave you to it.
All right, Harriet. Well, I'll see you later then.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, Robert, do I hear the rustle of pound notes?
Oh, a modest crinkling. My clients are prepared to go to 30,000.
Yes, I should think so too.
Then you'll accept.
No, you'll have to do better.
It's a fair offer, James.
No. 50,000 would be fair, and your clients can afford it. But in the circumstances, we'll settle for 40.
Now, James, if I were you, and I say this as a friend, I'd settle.
Well, thank you, Robert. But I'm not sufficiently impressed by the look of your star witness for tomorrow. Mr. Gibbon, neither is my client. Neither, I suspect, are you. But we'll think about it. Good night, Robert.
Good night, James.
And you think you can force him up, what, another 5?
Another 10?
40,000? McGregor, he's a shrewd bargainer.
Yes, but if he's willing to offer 30 already.
That's no guarantee he'll up the offer each time you say no.
A couple of more times would do.
Well, you could be right.
You're not convinced?
You could be right.
Yeah, anyway, the final decision is Bob Graham's if he says settle.
He'll take your advice. You're the expert.
Yeah. Oh, well, the whole thing's a poker game. McGregor's a very canny player.
And you?
Good enough?
$30,000, eh?
It's a considerable improvement.
What do you think?
Well, they obviously feel your case is holding up much better than they expected. The question is, how much damage can this workmate of yours do? Gibbon?
Workmate of mine? I hardly know the bastard. I'll tell you about Ted Gibbon. He's been with the firm 2 years. Pal of mine knew him at his last place. He got sacked for thieving.
Thieving, Mr. Graham?
Oh, well, not money nor nothing. Little things. Spares, set of hand tools. I know we all do a bit of it now and then, even if it's just a couple of screws, but him... In fact, I wouldn't have been surprised to see him get done again. Instead, what happens? He gets made up to supervisor after only 2 years. And after a conversation with me that he never even had. Now, what does that tell you, Mr. Elliot?
It tells me we don't accept £30,000.
The clerk stands up and says, "Are your names June Mary Robertson?" You simply reply yes. He then says you are charged in an indictment, which he then reads out in full, ending with, "To that charge, do you plead guilty or not guilty?" You reply guilty.
I'll go to prison, won't I?
The whole point of pleading guilty is to avoid that. Believe me, June, it's the best way.
Detective Inspector Cheshire, do you produce the antecedent history of June Robertson?
I do, sir.
Has the accused any previous convictions?
One previous conviction on the 8th of January last at Camden Magistrates Court on a charge of stealing 1 packet of biscuits and 1 bottle of milk from a supermarket. The accused pleaded guilty to the charge and was placed on probation for 12 months.
In other words, Inspector, the accused is still on probation at this time?
That is correct, my lord.
I see.
And is it right, officer, that the defendant was born and brought up in Dudley and left school at the age of 15?
Can you recall Mr. Graham's precise words to you, Mr. Gibbon?
No, not precise. No, sir. It was, well, what he said was he'd had a close shave.
And what was his manner at that time?
Oh, he was shaken and angry. He said the machines weren't safe.
What did you say to him?
Well, I'd asked him if he'd been using the guard.
And what was his reply?
He said, of course he didn't. Nobody did.
Was that in fact the case?
Oh, most of them didn't. A few did.
Did you, for instance?
Oh, yes, always.
Why did you?
Well, it seemed a sensible thing.
Had you received any instructions on the matter?
Yeah, from the foreman when I started, like he did with everybody.
What did he say?
Well, he just pointed out the dangers.
Or did he say anything else?
Well, he said there wasn't much he could do about it, short of standing over the fellas every hour of the day. Besides, there was a notice in the locker room for all to see. They knew the dangers.
Inspector, we have heard that Miss Robertson was trying to hitch a lift on the Darrow Road and that she was stopped by the police patrol because she appeared to be in an odd condition. Can you expand on that?
Sort of unsteady.
But not under the influence of drink or drugs?
No, she was medically examined.
Did she in fact know where she was or what she was doing?
I don't know. She kept saying that she had to get away.
From what?
She didn't say.
You had not at that time realized the connection between Miss Robertson and the two reports, one of a missing girl and a baby, and the other of an abandoned baby in Borough Park?
No, miss.
Did she give you the impression of being, as it were, on the run?
Well, not in the conventional sense, no, not really.
Thank you, Inspector.
Mr. Elliot, I would have thought by now you have adequately established that Mr. Gibbon did not speak to anyone else of his conversation with the plaintiff, also that there was no witness to that conversation.
I'm glad to hear it, my lord. Now, Mr. Gibbon, you are asking this court to accept your word alone that this conversation took place.
That's right, yes.
Your word as an honest man.
Yes.
Mr. Gibbon, would you care to tell the court why you were dismissed from your previous job as a machine operator with Swan Lund Brothers?
I left. I wasn't dismissed.
Remember, you are on oath, Mr. Gibbon.
If anyone can remember so far back.
With the greatest respect, my lord, it is far from easy to conduct a cross-examination while subject to these constant interruptions from the bench.
Particularly, I see, when these interruptions call into question your conduct of that cross-examination.
As the credibility of the plaintiff has been called into account by this witness, I would have thought it only reasonable to examine the witness's own credibility. Now, if I may continue, Mr. Gibbon, were you not promoted to your present rank of supervisor only shortly before my client had commenced his action against this company, and after you had, happily for them, recalled your conversation with him?
Really, Mr. Elliot? Are you suggesting that this witness was bribed by the company with an offer of promotion to perjure himself? I am beginning to wonder whether your vocation is for the law or for purveying the more lurid forms of detective fiction.
And I am beginning to wonder whether in this court I shall have the opportunity of examining the difference.
Mr. Squires, when you took Miss Robertson into your employment, you knew of her background.
The probation officer spoke to us. And June herself was quite open.
Had you any qualms about employing her?
None whatsoever. She seemed a very decent girl.
What were her duties in your home?
Not duties, really. Fairly free and easy. General housework, helping out as she was asked. Sort of an au pair.
How was her behavior generally?
Fine. We were very fond of her.
And her attitude towards the baby?
She was very good with him.
Had she ever taken him out in his pram?
Yes, but only when she was specifically asked to. We couldn't understand what had happened, taking him without a word. It was completely out of character.
This is a claim for damages resulting from an industrial accident in which the question arises as to what extent, if any, the plaintiff himself must take responsibility for his injuries. We have heard a great deal of evidence on both sides of the argument, and I intend summarizing only such part of it as I consider relevant to the central issue of contributory negligence. It may be of some comfort to Mr. Elliot if I say that, in my opinion, the evidence of Mr. Gibbon, together with Mr. Elliot's own strenuous, at times one might almost say frantic efforts to undermine it, have had no bearing on my decision either way.
My lord, in my submission, this is an exceptional case in which an exception can be taken in the matter of sentence. It is a case where the accused has already suffered considerably by being kept in custody pending trial. And it is not, I suggest, a case where your lordship may feel there is any real prospect of the accused committing a similar offence in the future. In all the circumstances, laying particular emphasis, as I do, on the psychiatrist's evidence, and on his declared readiness to offer Miss Robertson care and supervision in the future, I would ask your lordship to take a course combining justice with an exceptional degree of mercy, and not impose an immediate custodial sentence.
It is clear to me that the plaintiff cannot but have been aware of the dangers he was running in using an unguarded machine. His motives for doing so are of no consequence. I find, as a matter of fact, that he had been duly and properly warned. From that point on, therefore, the matter lay in his own hands. I conclude, therefore, that there must have been an element of contributory negligence, and I would assess it at 40%. The damages will be reduced accordingly. I assess the full amount of damages at £42,000. This will be diminished to £25,000. Is there any payment into court?
25,000, my lord. My lord, I would ask that my client only pay the costs up until the date of the payment in.
Mr. Elliot, you can have no objection to that course, can you?
No, my lord.
I must say, Mr. Elliot, having heard of the payment in, it is a matter of regret that this claim was not settled before coming into court.
All stand.
Suspended sentence.
Oh, in spite of the probation order. She's a lucky girl.
I was lucky too. Dunbar's a decent judge. Which reminds me, Mr. Elliot,
Yes, Mr. Elliot.
is he in his room?
Well, he swept straight in from court and straight out again. Among other colourful remarks, some of which took me back years to the NCO's mares, he said he'd be out of touch until midday on Monday.
Oh, one can hardly blame him.
Yeah, well, there's a bit of a problem, really. A brief he should have taken with him. I phoned his flat, but there's no reply.
I know where he'll be, that tumble-down cottage of his. Give it to me, Bill. I'll drop it in.
Oh, you going up there?
I'm meeting Dr. Moody and some friends in Wilcombe. I can make a detour.
I'd be very grateful.
Might even try to cheer him up.
Well, rather you than me.
What a bag for? Christen them all Briggs.
Sounds like voodoo.
I live in hopes.
These shelves look fit to hold the All England law reports.
The law will not set one clod-hopping boot or a clammy hand in this place. It is a shrine to higher things.
Such as?
You name it, it's higher.
James, aren't you going to appeal?
On what? Briggs found against me on fact. That leaves very little room for manoeuvre. I shouldn't have lost my temper with him. I should have done that to the bastard.
Losing your temper could have been a very clever tactic. If a judge is giving you a hard time and you hit back, he's going to be doubly careful to be fair in summing up. Otherwise, if you do appeal...
Mr. Justice Briggs' honourable face wouldn't be seen for egg, but he was fair, legally. The crafty old sod. He completely sidestepped the issue we fell out on.
Discounting Gibbons' evidence?
Well, at least saying he didn't. There was no way that I could prove him a liar. Anyway, still that poor bastard with a broken back who pays 23,000 quid. That's what he ended up with. 23,000 quid to last him the rest of his life. And I turned down 30. You always said I never knew when to settle. My God, what a farce. We take people's money, we give advice, we mumble reassuringly about statutes they've never heard of and we only half understand ourselves. And worse than politicians, they make promises and break them. We advertise divine justice and deliver compromise, defeat, disgrace, disaster, bankruptcy. Everything except the one thing we're supposed to be about. Justice. That made me laugh. It's a lottery. A Briggs or a Dunbar. You pays your money and good luck.
All very interesting, James. Now, tell me what's really worrying you.
Harriet, you are marvellous. And you haven't said, I told you so, not once.
It was your case, James. You handled it the way you thought best.
Yes, and if you'd been handling it, Bob Graham would be a happier man this weekend.
Not necessarily. Now, if he'd had a different judge...
Do you remember? I once told you I might just chuck it one of these days. On a day like today. when it and I make me feel sick.
Yes, I remember. It was here. When you told me you were thinking of buying the place.
I don't think you believed me, did you?
I don't think I passed an opinion.
What's that?
Present from Bill.
Frankly, I would prefer a heavy cold.
Not when you've seen the fee.
Whatever it is, it's more than I'm worth.
Well, I'll leave it anyway. James, the other reason I came over was to take you out to lunch with Ian and some friends. You like them?
Ah, thank you, Harry. That's very kind of you, but I've got a lot to do. I mean, I've got to do something about these shelves, and there's this painting.
Leave it.
Honestly, I'll be all right.
I just don't want you sitting here brooding on your own.
I promise you I will be all right. Really, I'm used to it. Us bachelors spend...
Darling, I'm back. I'll put the stuff in the kitchen.
Staff problems. You simply can't get a decent housekeeper.
I hope she's good at painting.
She's a dab Ann with a spot of emulsion. Harriet, thank you for coming. That was very kind.
Part of the service.
I'll read the,
Will you show me around before I go?
Yes, of course. Let's start downstairs. Hey, listen.
Yes?
I found these marvellous local builders.
Really?
They're known for their building, but they make terrific tea. Really? No, I promise it's the best.